Today, as you can see, we have a very interesting and at the same time a very important topic. We are going to talk about drugs and alcohol. And this lecture is going to show us the urgency of eliminating these two defects since they actually make any progress in the inner work impossible. So if you have a problem with the alcohol or drugs, this will be a very good lecture for us. But if we don't actually think that we have a problem with drugs and alcohol, we can use certain information from this lecture so we can help others to get out from drugs and alcohol. But we are going to see that if we manage to find those defects inside of us, because maybe to a greater or to a lesser level, we have nurtured these defects, but it happens that we understand that only those who we consider like addicts have a problem, with alcohol and drugs. But today we're going to analyze that little by little, if we don't work on the small details that lead us to give in to these defects, we will end up falling to ever greater levels from one existence to another. So if we can find in ourselves the small details of these defects or the big details of these defects that are going to give us wisdom in relation to this situation, and we are going to be like able to help others to get out from these defects. In addition to this, we are going to find what are the main causes of the alcohol. So today we are going to study about that demon or dark entity who is in charge of managing all the process of drugs and alcoholism. And well, we are going to divide this lecture today into three parts. First, we are going to talk about alcoholism, then we are going to talk about drugs, and then we are going to talk how to get out from this, how to free ourselves from the chains that these defects will represent, and how to work to eliminate these defects from our psychology. So, well, let's start with today's lecture, and as I was saying, let's first talk a little about alcoholism. And to make an objective understanding of this subject, we are going to approach this defect of alcoholism for what it really is, a very strong and a very subtle demon which slowly and pleasantly attracts and traps us until it manages to dominate us totally and subdue us. So we are going to learn what is the entity, the demon behind this defect of the alcoholism. We are going to study about what are the motives of this demon, what are his characteristics, and what are the physical, psychological, and spiritual consequences of the alcoholism. Because when we get to really understand the consequences that something is bringing to us, then that motivates us to work on that and eliminate that from our psychology. So we need to start by explaining that all processes of drug addiction and alcoholism on this planet and within each one of us are driven by a defect or a force or a concentration of negative energy that is a demon, external and internal, because as there are black entities external to us, we also have our own psychological defects that are like the representation of those external demons, but in ourselves. And if those external demons have power to move things within us, to lead us to act in certain way or to fall into certain vices, is because we have those defects inside of us. So we are going to study that demon, and we are going to see it externally, but we need to see that also internally. And well, that demon is known by the name of alcohol, or alcohol for the Arabs, which means body eating spirit. And that is actually that name alcohol, the etymological origin for the word alcohol. It also it is represented by the head of Medusa, which was slain by Perseus in the Greek mythology. And well, this is all related to something that is so common to us nowadays, which is alcohol, but that is one of the fastest way to lower our vibration, and that it's been used as a tool to keep human consciousness subdued and at a lowered state for thousands of years. And if we want to awaken our consciousness, it is very important to study today's topic. So let us see the modus, the characteristics that define this demon, and how they are fulfilled in our lives when we allow ourselves to be carried away by our internal defect of the alcoholism and drugs, so that we get to realize, as I was saying, the seriousness of the problem that this actually represents. Well, let's see the modus of alcohol. The first one is that he says, I am the owner of the plant. And we can easily see that alcoholism is one of the biggest causes of accidents and of heinous crimes that we see on the planet. But at the same time, we can also see that we can find alcohol freely everywhere. Absolutely all of us, in one way or another, are frequently faced with a situation that leads us to consume alcohol, since it is like present at any social situation, in a business meeting, even in a birthday party, at meals, and usually when we think about distracting ourselves, relaxing, and having fun, alcohol is present. And it is actually like ironic to think how something that at the time was illegal and prosecuted by law, today it is something very normal and even desirable, despite its unavoidable consequences. So we see how slowly and seductively this demon has been taking over the planet, since currently it is very rare to find someone who doesn't consume alcohol, even to a minimal degree. And we can even see how young people and even children are facing themselves every time, like at a younger age, with the temptation to consume alcohol or to fall into drugs. Well, another of the modus of this demon is, I am the thief of solar atoms. And I'm going to explain this. We have been explaining into lectures since so far the importance of our energy, especially of our sexual energy, for our inner work, for the spiritual birth. Our inner energy, our sexual energy, in its pure form, is composed of solar atoms that, correctly used through the suprasexuality, have the ability to regenerate us, to regenerate, our physical body, our vital body, turning us into strong, into healthy people with full vitality. But also, this energy allows us to create ourselves, our astral body, our mental body, and our causal bodies, so that we can be beings of awakened consciousness in this third dimension, but also in the higher dimensions of nature. But it happens that both alcohol and drugs rot the sexual energy. They turn the solar atoms of our sexual energy into involutional lunar atoms, that making any advance in the inner work obviously impossible. So for that reason, that motto of I am the thief of solar atoms, because when we consume alcohol, it is going to damage the solar atoms of our energy. And well, another motto, I am the father of corruption and misfortune. And it is totally like that. Any sense of ethics, of morals, you can see that relaxes and are even distorted after a few good drinks. And we also see that the biggest cause of accidents is represented by driving under the influence of the alcohol. We can see how it always leads us to act like driven by our lowest instincts. And we see how on many occasions alcohol is the cause of misfortune reaching the families, because the drunkard believes that he drives very well and that alcohol doesn't affect him at all. But then the car accident happened, and then another tragic death because of the alcohol abuse. So it's actually the father of the corruption and of the misfortune. But it's also the father of the degeneration and vice. And we see that alcohol, for example, has like the peculiarity of like inhibiting, I don't know if that is the right way to pronounce that word, I think. It's like, I think it's inhibiting the personality. Like the personality like goes to a side. And anyone, you can see that, can have a shy personality, which makes difficult for him to, or for her, to socialize or to talk to strangers or to speak in front of a public. And there is always someone who suggests, consuming a little alcohol, saying that it will help you to relax and to open up. But this is like going out through a false door, which will not really help you to solve the problem, but will enslave you. Because when drinking alcohol, effectively, that will inhibit the personality, let's think that is the word, and the person will feel safe and will feel brave and will go and will talk and will dance and whatever. But it has not generated any real change in that person, since that, let's say, sensation of being strong or of being safe will last as long as the effect of the alcohol lasts, and will return to the introverted state when that effect finishes. And each time the person will need a higher dose to feel the same. And that way that person will become dependent and slowly will enslave himself to alcohol and gradually will go degenerating. So that is not the way. If you actually have a shy personality, if you need to study the defects behind your shyness. You need to self-observe and reflect on what are the causes, why I feel shy. If it is because I'm afraid of this, or because I'm afraid of that. And if we get to reflect on all this and we start eliminating with the psychological depth every little detail of that situation, we are going to be really setting ourselves free from that defect, but not going or using that false door of the alcohol or of drugs to actually think that we can manage this kind of situation, because, well, we will end up like becoming dependent and slowly degenerating with that kind of false doors, let's say. And well, you can see that we start with a few drinks. So nobody starts like consuming lots of alcohol. We start with a few drinks. But as we consume more and more, our personality start like changing. And more heavier ways of being comes to manifest in us, and we, under the effects of the alcohol, can't end up committing mistakes that we can only just regret later. We see what happens, for example, when a person goes to a party, talking of a shy person again, and he's looking at the environment. He's just calm, shy, you know. But as that person begins to drink one and another drink, like if it is like if different animals' ways of being start to manifest in that person. With a few drinks, the person start like a parrot, you know, talking and talking nonstop. That is like the first animal way that start like manifesting. A few more drinks, and then you see like the person is turning into like a monkey because he's starting to make jokes, to laugh nonstop, etc. A few more drinks, and you see like a peacock like comes out and begins to show the feathers, and the person begins to talk about his achievements, to show pictures, to philosophize, to show himself, etc. But a few more drinks, and then it can turn out into a gorilla, and it comes out that it now wants to fight with everyone. And if that person continue drinking, a pig comes out, and that is the way of being that sleeps with anyone, that is no longer like selective, now only wants to fornicate like a pig, and ends up there with anyone doing anything, or ends up like, you know, throwing up. And the next day, the person can even like doesn't even remember what he did last night, and goes and check on the phone and see to see what happens, what did I did last night, or wakes up in an unfamiliar room with a person who doesn't know at all, or wakes up in a hospital, and then you know the terrible hangover and the I will never drink again, which is never fulfilled, and all the nasty consequences. And all that because we don't make ourselves aware of the seriousness of this thing. And we just like trying to go away and to have a good time, end up committing many mistakes against ourselves, against our own consciousness. And we can even live that situation and we can say, oh my God, I will never drink again. But it happens that later, that becomes, we just like forget, and that becomes just like a funny story to tell. And a few weeks later or months later, the desire appear again in ourselves because we have that demon within us. We have that defect of the alcohol. And so we are falling into that vicious circle of I'm not drinking again and it's doing again, etc. And we will see that when we enter that circle, it is not so easy to get out. And it is very interesting to observe, and I think it's one of those like subtle ways in which this demon managed to trap us. And it is that we get to think that we always think that we can control it, and that those who fall into vices are those weak people, but that we are not. We are not calm, right? And it is just as we are giving in to consume a little, taking a little more, and slowly we take the taste and we include it more and more. At the first time, we only have, I don't know, a glass of beer from time to time, you know, to share, or to watch a football game, beer. But then, it is not only one, or many beers. And then we start like including a glass of wine on special occasions or with meals, a glass of whiskey to close the business, or simply out of a habit at the end of the day. Champagne for special occasions, and a shot of tequila to share with friends and have a good time. And mixed drinks for the girls to try new things, mojito, Mai Tai. And little by little, we don't realize how subtly we are consuming alcohol too often. But slowly, it has become like normal for us. So it is important that we like start studying at what level we find ourselves of consumption, so we can stop it and like return. But what happens? As we have been seeing in the different lectures, we live many existences as humans, We don't live only one life, but many lives. And when our physical body dies, our psychological defects, which are the ones that have trapped 97% of our consciousness, they don't die. With the death of the physical body, our defects do not die because they have inside a portion of our consciousness that is immortal. And in the next existence, they return with us. And when we create our personality, they start expressing themselves in us to continue feeding on our energy and to continue growing, becoming stronger, and submit us more and more. And that is why, for that reason, that we see, for example, that if a group of teenagers, let's say, try alcohol or even drugs at the same time, let's say a group of teenagers, 10 of them, try alcohol for the first time or drugs, you are going to see that some of them get hooked more easily than others. And why is this? It's because for some of them, it will probably be their first existence or their first life consuming alcohol or drugs, or the second existence or the third. But for others, for some of them, they will already have many lives feeding these defects. Maybe some of them were totally drunkards, in previous existence, and they have these defects like bigger inside them, stronger, and in this existence, when they begin to consume, they quickly become hooked and they quickly fall into vice. And for that reason, the need to stop and eliminate these defects, regardless the level of consumption that we have, regardless of whether we believe that we can control them. Actually, with drugs and alcohol, we shouldn't make like negotiations. No, we must be radically eliminating these defects. And well, the father of the generation in vice, you can see that. But it is also the destroyer of homes. That is another of the modus of this demon. And it is too common to see how domestic violence is usually based in its consumption. How these defects bring out in the person like it's more cruel defects, capable of hurting and even killing those who supposedly love the most. So we can see that it is not something like without importance. Or if we actually get to reflect on this, we are going to see that we are committing a mistake when we take this how to explain it? When we take this when we don't give enough importance to this situation, when we think that none of that is going to happen to us, because we see how the alcohol or the drug addict can actually cause pain to his family, to himself, etc. And it is very important to reflect on the consequences of these defects to realize that it is very true, this last motto that says that it is the cause of the misery and ruin. And well, let's now see some of the characteristics of this demon. For example, this one lubricates the wheel of samsara. And what does that mean? The wheel of samsara is that wheel in which we all find ourselves, the wheel of evolution and involution that we explained in lecture number 8 of the course. And when we create these defects for the first time, we generate a recurrence, as we explained in the lecture number 12. And in each life, in each new existence, at the same age, and sometimes earlier, this defect will come to try to manifest again. And each time that we give in to the glass, to the shot, this defect grows and becomes stronger. And each time it's going to submit us more and enslave us more, and more quickly it destroys us. So it leads us to die earlier. And if we have in each opportunity in the wheel of samsara to 108 existences to achieve self-realization, but we don't eliminate these defects, then if in one existence, because of this defect, we died, let's say at the age of 50, in the next existence, as we got hooked faster and we consume more and more, consequently, we no longer reach 50 years. And at 40, we die. And so on. Our existences are shortened, and therefore our possibilities to achieve self-realization are exhausted faster. So that is a very important thing to consider. Another characteristic is that this demon insinuates itself wherever, in any place. It's always tempting. And we must begin to observe and become aware of how alcohol is everywhere. Even at a children's party, there is no lack of alcohol, yes, for adults. But they are giving the children the signal from an early age that drinking alcohol is okay, that it is something to aspire to when they grow up. And if we actually get to think about this situation, it was early in our lives when that curiosity of tasting alcohol was like zoning us, because we saw the grown-ups drinking and having fun, but without ever realizing the consequences that it brought to them, and we felt that desire to also do the same. So we need to also reflect on this. And well, another characteristic, it is that it's very subtle and diplomatic. You can see that it can be very disguised. You can see that as something very fine sometimes, very diplomatic. And we actually get to feel very sophisticated when drinking Scotch whiskey or champagne or martini or a gin tonic, I don't know. And if you're going to close a very important business, you cannot, miss the drink. And how you feel pressured if the boss or a person that you consider important invites you to sophisticated drink, and if you want to reject it, oh my God, I'm going to feel bad. But we could also observe all those defects that are manifesting themselves there, so we can actually eliminate them. And we should also consider those selves that consider themselves important because we have in our home, in that mini bar, or in the office with those selected drinks, so expensive. And actually that is part of this defect that has this way to make us believe that he can be very diplomatic, very fine, very important. And well, another characteristic of this defect is that he has the talent of the ubiquity. And you can see how everywhere, regardless the social class, the age, the gender, or the race, we can find alcohol. It is important that when we begin to study these defects in ourselves, we study all the situations when we started to consume, in which ways we consume it, and which ways of being move in each situation. That is going to be very useful if we want to get out from this, to get to discover what that defect makes us feel, to discover the desire, to discover the justifications that we had, and start making ourselves aware of all this, observing all that in our interior, so we get to eliminate that with the psychological death. Well, let's talk now a little about the consequences of the alcohol. Beyond the physical and the psychological consequences that are wide known that this alcohol brings us, how it terribly damages the liver, the esophagus, the pancreas, how it damages even the sexual apparatus, generating, impotence, and how it, for example, brings birth defects to the child, how it affects the ability to concentrate, etc. Let's focus a little at the spiritual consequences that this brings us, since the spiritual consequences are less known, or almost anyone talks about that part. And one of those spiritual consequences, important ones, is that alcohol ends the possibility of being. So we see that, you can see that in the physical world, and you can see that in the spiritual world. In the physical world, you can see, for example, a young man who had perhaps many dreams, many aspirations in his life, many plans to study this or to become that. But by getting involved into alcohol at an early age, he ends up ruining his chances of achieving these goals and dreams. So he is ending his possibilities of being, I don't know, whoever he wanted to be in this physical world. But in relation to the self-realization, to the spiritual work that we are doing, that actually is our true objective in this existence, that will be totally impossible if we don't radically eliminate the defect of the alcohol or of the alcoholism, since it doesn't allow us to advance in our inner work, as it prevents our work in the 3 factors for the consciousness revolution. In the case of the psychological death, when we are making our constant work of self-observation and judging any manifestation of our ego and asking our Divine Mother to eliminate all the details of the defects that we managed to discover in ourselves. Since alcohol rots our sexual energy, and our sexual energy is creative, alcohol gets to revive the death defects. Each time that we consume alcohol, we lose the progress that we are making in the psychological death, because it damages our energy, and it is affecting the psychological death, but it's also affecting the spiritual birth, because as our sexual energy is, every time we consume alcohol, is turning into, is converting into lunar atoms, it will be impossible for us to achieve chastity. And actually, you can even see that alcohol leads us to the worst, violence in sex. Under the effect of alcohol, we actually let our heaviest details of loss to manifest. And a person who drinks alcohol falls much more easily into fornication, into adultery, even into promiscuity. How you say that? I think promiscuity. I don't know. I don't remember how to pronounce that well. But to have sex with so many people, or to participate in orgies, and all kind of sexual practices that perhaps they wouldn't agree to being sober, because it dulls the senses and the moral relaxes, and in a drunken state one is more influenced to any kind of weird suggestion. And well, this defect also increases our weakness, so because it is stealing from us that revolutionary force that is leading us to make this work, and it also stimulates the fantasy. And a person who drinks alcohol cannot see life in an objective way. When he's under the effects of alcohol, cannot clearly see the consequences of his action, and he carried away by pleasure. Only wants to live a life of sex, drugs, and rock and roll, to the edge. And actually, we need to know that when drinking alcohol, we cannot judge ourselves. We cannot self-observe. So it's actually a huge mistake to continue feeding these defects if we want to really awaken consciousness. And well, another consequence is that these defects develops irresponsibility in us. Yes, you can see that. And it also like weakens our ethical sense because it destroys like our human part, and it's animalizing us, turning us like insensitive. Is we tend to lose that sensibility that makes us human because it is like atrophy in a state of drunkenness. And to regain that sensitivity, that control over our mind and emotion, the person should cleanse himself and of alcohol and work on himself. And well, we must understand that the consequences of pleasure are always pain. And if we don't learn to deny ourselves to those kinds of pleasures that alcohol and drugs give us, nothing is going to prevent us from having to face the pain of the physical, the psychological, and the spiritual consequences that alcohol has. There are many warnings to have into account, and the first one is that with this effect, we must be radical. We cannot think of living this little by little, believing that we will be able to consume less or only on special occasions. Okay, I understand I'm going to leave alcohol, but I'm going to drink it only on special occasions. No, because this demon is very treacherous. And when we least expect it, he stabs us in the back and make us fall lower than before by waiting for us to be like in the perfect situation. Like for example, we are passing through a hard sentimental situation. Our partner left us. But when we were fired from work, or that we lost a loved one because someone died, you know, or something happy. He waits for something happy to happen. For example, there is something very important to celebrate, and there we see, oh my God, yeah, I need to drink now. And that way, the defect sneaks in and make us fall in a terrible way. So it is important that we we understand the need to be radical with this defect. Do not make arrangements, compromises of any kind, because it is very treacherous, and sooner or later it stabs us in the back. So if we really decide to getting out from this, we need to be radical, and we need to start self-observing and eliminating all the details of the taste for the alcohol or the alcoholism from our interior. So we need to eradicate that internal demon so that external demon, which is alcohol, doesn't have like more power again over us. And no matter the situation that we face, we are not falling into that again, because now we already have a comprehension, we have a wisdom that we have rescued from the elimination of all those details. And as that defect doesn't live inside me, nothing that I can see in the exterior can now move me to want to return again to fall into that vice. So well, that in relation to the alcohol. Let's now talk a little about drugs. Actually, the scourge of drugs, is even stronger than alcoholism, as it produces like much more pleasure in the person. Also, the pain is stronger because the consequences are stronger, and are also perceived like in a shorter term. So, like we see the consequences like faster. And people, you can see, get hooked much more easily. And when they want to give up to the vice, they feel like totally weak before this defect. They try repeatedly and come back and fail. And each failure in the attempt of leaving this defect comes to reaffirms the weakness that they feel. And to get to understand that it is totally possible for each one of us to get out from drugs, no matter how hooked we are or how long we have been using. It is important to understand this psychological unfolding. It is important to verify that within ourselves there are two men, the outer man and the inner man. The outer man is that like egoic way of being with multiple attitudes and reactions, that personality, in us, with which we commonly express in our external world, which is just like a puppet of all the psychological defects. That represents our weakness, the one who always feels that he's a victim, that he's been paid badly, that feels sorry for himself, that considers himself too much, and feels weak in front of this or in front of any defect. But we tend to think that this other man is all that we are. But the psychological unfolding shows us the reality of the inner man. The inner man is our authentic being that lives inside of us, and he is processed in other very different laws. He could never, ever be turned into a robot, into a puppet of the psychological defects. When we manage to discover and to recognize within ourselves that particular warrior, that source of strength, that source of wisdom, that source of love that resides in the consciousness of each one of us, we then try to act in life according to the fundamental principles that we carry there, deep within our beings. And for our inner being, eliminating the defects of drugs or alcohol is not difficult. Our being understands that these defects have trapped a large portion of our consciousness, a large portion of wisdom, and our being understands that facing and eliminating these defects will give us back a lot of strength, a lot of encouragement for our inner work. Since all the spirit that we currently have to fit this defect, we will like free that spirit that is now trapped and conditioned to serve to this defect, and we are going to give it back to our consciousness, and it's going to help us in the work of the liberation of our consciousness. And all the understanding and all that wisdom that we rescue from the elimination of these defects will also help us to help others to get out of that slavery, since each defect that we manage to understand is like our own wisdom, is a knowledge of oneself. And whoever has eliminated this defect can more easily help others to get out from there. If we don't recognize that higher part in ourselves, it will be very difficult for us to face this or any defect. We will feel weak, we will feel incapable. But for that inner man to start like manifesting in us, first one must be able to recognize our own nothingness, our inner misery, and when one has like the courage to review, our lives and to look and to face our own mistakes and to develop that conscious faith, which is the faith that is obtained through the practice and the direct experimentation of the knowledge, then we can recognize that all inside of us have that power, that all inside of us have the force to get out from this. Something that I want to talk to you a little is about this that can maybe sound new for you, and it's about the Dionysian wave. Actually, in the 60s, where the age of Aquarius began under the regency of Uranus, the Dionysian wave started like vibrating like intensely through nature. And this can define, or this had the purpose for us to have the opportunity to better awaken our consciousness. When this wave, known as the Dionysian wave, start moving in the planet, it has the purpose that we started to voluntarily transmute our sexual energy, and that we can find that mystical, transcendental ecstasy, you know? And what happens at that point? That the most part of humanity were not able to positively polarize with that wave, because that wave have two poles. The positive pole includes that subliminal sexual delight of the supersexuality, the voluntary transmutation of our sexual energy, the awakening of consciousness, the objective knowledge, the intuition, the transcendental music of the great classic masters, so we get to enjoy that, etc. That is the positive pole. Actually, very few humans were able to polarize, positively with that wave. Most of the humanity took the negative pole, which was the sexual degeneration. So you see that from the 60s, from now, the sexual degeneration has been growing up, the infrasexualism of all kinds, the homosexuality, lesbianism, the mystic drugs like the mushroom, the marijuana, etc., grown a lot. And it started to create. They started creating that new music, the music of the new wave. That also was the negative pole of this wave. And well, what we need to understand that these things are related to that we know as the mystical drugs, because they started to flourish with that situation. And we think that with that kind of drugs that we call mystical drugs, we are actually experiencing something superior, that we are actually experiencing the truth, or that we are actually achieving meditation. But we need to comprehend that it's not the way. We are just experiencing the psychedelia, and when we see this word, we can see that it's first psyche, which means soul or mind, and delia, which is drug. So especially when we are talking about psychedelic or psychedelia, we are talking about drugging the mind or our soul. And actually, psychedelia is the antipode of meditation. When we studied the infradimension, we saw the circle of Venus, and there in that infradimension is where we find the hell of drugs, because there you find all the pleasures and all the vices. And what are the hallucinating mushrooms, the pills, the LSD, marijuana, etc.? They intensify the vibratory capacity of all those subjective powers that we have, and they could never ever originate the awakening of consciousness. Drugs fundamentally alters our consciousness, but in a wrong way. Meditation and psychedelia are opposite. They could never be mixed. And well, actually, I want to talk to you a little about the consequences of drugs. It's important that we get to understand this, because this brings us many terrible consequences. You will see that it brings us the same consequences of alcohol, but many others that are stronger. In relation to your physical body, you see how they affect the sexual apparatus, causing the person to reach sexual impotence prematurely. We'll see how quickly the physical body degenerates and destroys because of the use of drugs. Since a young man who begins to use drugs, In a short time, is made an old man. You can easily see that. But another very harmful consequence of this defect is that internally, spiritually, it opens gates, and the bigger and stronger psychological defects can get to manifest when we are under the influence of drugs, because it is like these 7 doors that we have in our lower abdomen that we saw in the lecture number 9 when we were talking about the infradimension. If they are this big and only defects of this, let's say, size can go or enter to our body to manifest, as the drugs open gates, make them wider, then stronger and bigger psychological defects can manifest. And you can see that an angry person, when use drugs, gets can become a very violent person. So actually, we must also reflect on that situation. In the vital body, when a person is consuming drugs, their vital body start fading, it start disintegrating. The vital body is like that energetic part that many people know as the aura, and is what gives life to the physical body. And as the person consumes drugs, that vital body loses its shine, and we see how the drug addict loses the tone of his skin and turns gray until the person ends up looking like a corpse. And if we could see our astral or the astral body of a drug addict, we will see how the astral body, when the person is under the influence of drugs, is like an idiot. It's like an umbrella man doing all sort of things. And in the mental body, they are terrible damages, since the alpha rays with the use of drugs are annihilated, and those intrinsic connections between the mind and the brain is lost, and the person loses the ability to focus, to concentrate. And if we examine the brain of a drug addict, we can see that the brain tissue of the mental body completely destroys. But also at the level of the causal body of the person, we can see how the essence gets to suffer the consequences of drugs, since the consciousness of that person internally is like a drunk, looking for where to fall. So we can understand by this that when using drugs, it's not only that we get to harm our physical body, but all of our internal bodies. And well, now that we have seen the characteristics, the consequences of these defects, let's see the important part, which is how these defects can be eliminated. And actually, the first step to eliminate these defects is to have the desire to do so, and to have the courage to do so. It is impossible to force anyone who doesn't want to quit the habit. It's not possible to make that person do so. It is impossible to force someone. So someone can really eliminate these defects in a definitive way if that person feels the desire to change, to work on himself, to achieve their own self-realization. And if the person is, yes, interested in changing and getting out of that situation, that person should first, that is the first step. The first step was to have the desire. Let's see, that is the second step, but is the first step to eliminate. The first thing is to self-observe. And you are going to manage to send the attention to our inner world to discover each of the desires and the emotions that alcohol or drugs make you feel. Let's remember that the self-observation is the main part to get to eliminate a defect. And if we start self-observing and we discover any of those desires. For example, I discovered that when I get up, I feel the desire to consume or to smoke something or to drink something. I discover the anxiety that it makes me feel, how it makes me think about calling that person or about going and buying something. Every one of those details that I get to observe, I must start eliminating them by asking my Divine Mother to eliminate them. So I'm in self-observation. I discover the desire. Anything in my emotion in relation to this, I ask Divine Mother, eliminate this and return to my state of self-observation, living the here and now. I discover now this intellectual justification, my mind saying something, whatever. This will be the last time, for example, says the mind, Divine Mother, eliminate this. I deny that desire and I return to my self-observation state. Here, concentrated, living the here and now. The mind starts saying, I don't know, I'm just going to that party, but I'm not going to drink. I'm just going to get along with that person. I know that it's justification. I know that when I'm there, I will end up falling. I will end up drinking or consuming. I need to deny myself and ask my Divine Mother to eliminate that justification and to eliminate that desire and whatever I feel inside of me. The acts of ill will. I mean, if I observe that I already am going to give in, that if I am going to get up and go to get the drink or the drug, I must be strong. I must self-observe, deny myself, and we must get to understand how powerful is our Divine Mother. And when we start asking her to eliminate this desire, eliminate this sensation, eliminate this emotion, this thought, this whatever, we are going to experience how that great help comes into our to save us. And she is going to start eliminating everything that we get to discover, and we are going to be setting ourselves free. Every time that we discover anything with the self-observation, we should ask mentally, Divine Mother, eliminate this defect. And we are going to start experiencing how we are going to start freeing ourselves from that influence. At the beginning, it's going to be strong because we have fed those defects so much. They are so big now, and they make us feel a strong desire. But when we start appealing to that inner man, to our inner being, and we start asking for that, for any detail, we are going to experience how it is going to start losing strength, and we are going to be every time more powerful. And every time that you ask for that, for a detail of a defect, you are setting free a part of your consciousness that is in this moment trapped within the defect. When you say, Divine Mother, eliminate this defect, whatever that you get to discover inside of you, you are rescuing a part of your consciousness. That part of your consciousness is coming to join your 3%, and as your 3% is growing, turning into a 4%, 4.5%, 5%, etc. As you get more consciousness, you get more power, and you get to get out from this kind of situation, actually from any defect, easier, because every time you are stronger. Every time that you deny your desire, you rescue the fire, you rescue the courage, you rescue the spirits, and you are now giving that fire, that courage, that spirit to your consciousness. So your consciousness is now more powerful, and you are going to see how you are able to get out from this. Now, something important to take into account is to leave the circle of friends with which we usually drink or consume drugs. since to eliminate this defect, we will need all of our willpower. And if we continue like to frequent the same places and the same people with whom we used to consume, we will be like constantly facing that temptation. So at first we could believe that we will be like alone if we leave that those friends. But we will see that as we work on ourselves and we get to eliminate our defects, our level of being is going to rise, and we are going to be like by law of affinity, just as before we used to attract drunks and drug addicts around us. Now, as we have a higher level of being, we will start attracting people with a higher vibration. So we are not going to be alone. And well, another important thing is to practice dervishes and sublimation. Allow me just a second. Sorry. These are exercises that are going to help us a lot to detoxify the liver. They will help us to align our three brains, and those are the dervishes. And the sublimation are a breathing procedure that is going to help us to use our sexual energy to start like regenerating our brain. Those two exercises, you can find them here in the page. The dervishes are in the lecture number 41 of the previous set of lectures, so you can find them as they are recorded here. And the sublimation in the lecture number 46. So you can go there and you can check how these are done, because they are very helpful to start detoxifying your body from alcohol or drugs. And another thing that I want to recommend to you are the negotiation with the laws. That is something that we learned in the previous lecture when we were talking about the laws of karma and dharma, and we were talking about how we can negotiate with the divine law certain things to get out from certain karmas. In this case, if you think that this defect is like too strong in you, that is not that easy for you to like get out from it, you can actually make a negotiation with the divine law for their like to hold the defect, to imprison the defect, and that will give you like that will allow you to like to feel a little like how can I explain? You are going to feel like if you are released from this defect, and you are going to be able to study that defect in the meditation to eliminate it. Like it will be easier for you to work on this. And you can actually compromise yourself to help others, to share the knowledge, to help others to awaken, to help others to get out from this. And the divine law, in exchange, will help you to hold in that defect, so you can actually work on that until you manage to eliminate it completely. That is something that you can, a tool that you can only use, that you can also use. And that is in our previous lecture that was laws of karma and dharma. And well, another thing to take into consideration is the idleness. And we need to understand that the cause of falling into vices is leisure. As the old saying goes, leisure is the mother of all vices. So it is important that we start to occupy our time in constructive things. And one of the ways to enter into unlimited occupation is to sacrifice for humanity, is by looking to help others. If the person who is regenerating help others to awaken their consciousness, to get out from those vices, by law of correspondence, he will have the right to be helped internally. So that is another recommendation. And the last recommendation is starting reflecting on these defects. To start like taking some time daily to carry these defects. I don't know if that is a correct way to express that. To bring in these defects to meditation that way. So we are going to be during the day working with the self-observation and the psychological depth, eliminating the desires, the justifications, and the ill will. You are going to be the whole day denying yourself to the manifestations of these defects, but also take a part of your days, an hour daily or whatever you think is like proper, to meditate on all the lived sins with this defect. And start like asking yourself this question: how far has this defect taken me? Be it alcoholism or drugs. How far did I went with this defect? What damages or has it caused to my physical body, to my relationship if I have a partner, to my family, with my friends, how it has damaged like my relationship with anyone, with my friends, with my work, with other people, but above all, how has this damaged my relationship with my own consciousness? And we must also reflect on the number of psychological conflicts that it has like brought to us in this existence. And that will give us a lot of information about these defects. We will discover by making ourselves these questions a lot of details of the defect that live inside us, and we can be there during that meditation eliminating more and more defects. How has it influenced our degeneration? We need to make ourselves aware. And we are going to start reflecting all these things to take out more and more details and eliminating them. And we are going to reach every time like more understandings about these defects. And we will have like more strength to face these defects. And when we realize like all the damage that it has like cost us, we will start like having that deeply need to actually eliminate those defects from our psychology. And well, actually this has been today's lecture. I hope that this information helped you somehow. I hope that you can encourage yourself to work on these defects. And well, I want to invite you to our next lecture. After that, I want to remind you this quote: to act in life according to the fundamental principles that we carry deep within our beings. And well, I want to invite you to the next lecture. In our next lecture, we will be talking about three important parts of ourselves: the ego, the personality, and the essence. So we learn to differentiate every act, when the ego is acting, when it's acting the personality, and when it's acting our essence.